On August 6, 1977, a Georgia man would set off on a walk and have an experience he would never forget. Tom Dawson, a 63-year-old retired auto salesman, would spot a UFO and eventually encounter 7 strange beings. The event terrified Tom and almost scared him to death. Right after it, he was so frightened and worked up he had to be hospitalized for hysteria. In this episode, we will examine the frightening alien encounter experienced by Tom Dawson. On August 6, 1977, around 10:30 in the morning, Tom Dawson began walking toward the pond on his property, accompanied by his dogs, to see if he should try and fish later in the day. As Tom walked in the fence that surrounded the pond, he would be stunned to see a UFO suddenly fly in. It began hovering between the trees and settled just a few feet off the ground. Tom was terrified, and to make things worse, just moments after the UFO settled, he found himself somehow paralyzed and unable to move. In addition, his 2 dogs were frozen as well as some nearby cattle. The UFO was around 50 feet in diameter and about 15 feet high. It was hovering silently and had a base color of silver, although there were other colors flashing and changing quickly. It was saucer-shaped, had a dome on top, and also had several portholes beneath the dome. The craft would descend further toward the ground, and then a ramp came down toward the ground. Then Tom would be horrified to see 7 humanoids start descending down a ramp. They were pale, around 5 feet tall, and had pointed ears and pointed noses. Some had tight-fitted silver outfits on, while others wore nothing. The first one to exit the ramp put their foot down softly on the ground, as if it was testing the surface. In other words, it seemed this species had never actually set foot on Earth. There is more support for this theory as well later on, as Tom saw they were collecting soil and leaf samples. Tom noted once the entity was able to plant its foot safely on the surface, the rest followed down the ramp. They approached Tom, and next the beings would perform some type of medical test on Tom. As they spoke some type of gibberish to one another, the beings placed some type of helmet-like device on his head. They also wrapped his midsection with something. While some of the entities were examining him, other ones were collecting samples of the soil and leaves. Once the test concluded, the beings went back up the ramp, the door shut, and the craft flew away at lightning speeds. As the craft flew away, Tom Dawson was released from his paralysis and began running back toward his home. He stopped by his neighbors, but being so worked up, all he could manage to say was spaceship. Tom was eventually taken to the hospital and treated for hysteria. He was given a sedative to calm him down. He would later recall that he believed the entities probably didn't take him because he was older. Tom's story is surely an interesting one and shares many common characteristics with other alien encounters and abductions. The beings appeared to be Nordic aliens, although they were shorter than other reports of Nordics. One other thing to point out is that the paralysis is something else that many other individuals who have these experiences report. Still, most often paralysis tends to be reported while people are laying down, which leads skeptics to say they are experiencing sleep paralysis, a documented medical phenomenon. Perhaps the most interesting thing about this case is that it occurred in the daytime. It's somewhat unusual to get reports of people experiencing these paralysis cases in broad daylight, although it's not unheard of. So did the beings plan to take Tom or not? This is tough to say, as they surely had some type of interest in him. One interesting thing Tom reported was that it appears, since they were hesitant to walk on the soil, they might have just came here for the first time. It's not known if Tom ever came in contact with these entities again. Hopefully, though, he was able to recover from his traumatic experience and enjoy the rest of his retirement.